Oh, he's one of those, you're one of those tech Indians, smart ones, huh? Two Snapchats? No.
When I saw this video of this racist, degenerate criminal randomly clip farming an average Indian, it made me think about the things India is actually known for. When you package India as a cultural product to sell to the rest of the world, you usually end up with things like yoga and Bollywood. Or you end up with propaganda if you're doing it for views and engagement on social media. And that's why people who have seen both the good and bad of India know that in today's world, the bad is highlighted far more than the good.
It really is so diverse.
I was absolutely bowled over by the colour, the noise, the people.
The diversity of the landscape.
They will talk about a cow dung celebration that happens in one small village nobody has ever heard of, as if it takes place all across the country. It's like using poop coffee to generalize an entire nation. No, seriously, have you heard of the poop coffee from Indonesia?
After eating and excreting coffee beans, once they are collected from the civet's poop,
Or the elephant poop coffee from Thailand? Have you heard of the sheep poop shitting festival in Ireland, where participants have to put sheep poop in their mouths before spitting it out? Now, if I told you that this represents all of Ireland, you would call me a propagandist, and rightly so. But if it was India, it would instantly become another hit piece or meme, because well, that's the narrative that's been built. And yet, because the poop coffee is expensive, those same people will savor it like it came out of a rare black hole after the Big Bang. Being exposed to too much anti-India content can make you think that maybe India doesn't care about its global PR. Maybe it doesn't know how to tell its story to the world. Because like every country, India has its own problems, and criticizing the government and the system is completely justified. But why is the world suddenly so obsessed with India's problems specifically?
No, we are not going there. Nope. Wow. This is where I'm going, bro. This is gonna give me views.
Why don't we see good things online about a country that is recovering remarkably from the effects of colonization? And it shouldn't take another gazillion years to get things right.
India is rising much faster than you think. In just one decade, India has doubled its national highway network, significantly increased its nighttime luminosity, and have built a lot of airports. They now have some of the most modern airports in the world. Check out Delhi's airport, or Mumbai's airport, or Bangalore's airport. They also went from almost zero 5G to nationwide coverage in just 3 years. Oh, and we also can't forget that they landed on the moon with a budget of a Hollywood movie. They've had the fastest growing economy in the world over the last decade, growing around 8% per year, and they've lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. India had a rough time from the 1950s to the early 2000s, and many people left India. And they did a great job. This is the median household income by ethnic group in the United States.
Soft power is how a country uses its culture, policies, and diplomacy to exert its influence. It basically means making someone want what you want without the use of any force. You attract them with your values, culture, entertainment, things like that. Japan and South Korea are great examples of countries that have used their soft power in the best possible way. But the greatest example of all is the United States. It has sold its story to the world so compellingly that living the American dream feels aspirational to millions. The movies, music, brands, and other tools of soft power it uses to influence the rest of the world are impossible to ignore. Yoga and Bollywood are great, but India needs to move beyond them and develop more soft power tools. Why? Because it has incredible potential. India has so much to offer to the world, yet it remains largely defined by just a few things: yoga, Bollywood, curry, and tech. That's because not enough effort is being made to tell the story the way it deserves to be told. And that's exactly why others are stealing India's soft power and rebranding it as their own. India is a whole different world in itself. The diversity here is unimaginable. Every region has its own cuisine, art forms, and stories. You can never run out of soft power assets in India. What makes this especially important today is that perception matters. What does the average Indian on the internet identify with? The racist memes? Even when they know their country has given the world some of its greatest ideas and contributions.
In a game or their image on screen in one of those Web 1.0 forums. Then in 2005, Nickelodeon published the hit animated series Avatar: The Last Airbender, in which the Avatar spirit is an entity that reincarnates within different humans throughout history, each one becoming the Avatar, an individual who maintains the world's balance and harmony. Then in 2009, James Cameron's movie Avatar was released, quickly becoming the highest-grossing movie of all time. In the movie, an avatar is a biologically engineered body that humans control remotely. These are all kind of conceptually related. An avatar refers to a person or entity being represented or embodied in a different form. Me as a little cartoon figure, Sergeant Forgettable name in a blue alien body, or the avatar spirit inhabiting Aang. But while avatar has only recently become a mainstream word in English, the concept is much, much older, deriving from Hindu scriptures thousands of years old. And while these pop culture avatars share some of the elements that we see in Hinduism, there are some key differences. The word avatar comes from the Sanskrit word avatara.
Avatar is just one of the many concepts that Indian culture has gifted to the world. These concepts are still being used in movies, music, and other forms of pop culture. But when it comes to the very place they originated from, these same people portray it as a backward, uncivilized land.
Especially for Americans, especially Americans my age or my generation, easily the worst thing to ever happen was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. You know, because that film is so incredibly prejudiced and just straight up, to use modern nomenclature, unwoke. You know, I've always wanted to say to Steven Spielberg, so Steven, if you're listening, I want to ask you a question, which is, why would you take easily one of the greatest cuisines in the world, Indian food, and make a mockery of it in that scene when they're eating dinner at the Maharaja's palace? I've never understood that.
You use the culture, but you don't want to credit it. Why? Because crediting it would mean telling India's story. And that makes sense. Indians are supposed to tell their own stories. But what are they actually doing? They're still fighting over whose state is better, as if they all belong to different countries. Classic divide and rule strategy the British used so effectively. It's almost as if the rest of the world can see India's soft power potential more clearly than Indians themselves can.
I tried to make a film that would touch people's spirituality across a broad spectrum.
India's soft power also runs deep through its philosophy, and anyone who has engaged with even 1% of it knows it is anything but shallow. You might just end up learning Sanskrit and abandoning society's noise to meditate in the mountains, which ironically is the opposite of what soft power in this context demands, given how closely it is tied to materialism. But Indian philosophy can absolutely offer history, literature, stories, and countless other tools that, if used well, could be extraordinarily powerful. One such tool is the Ramayana. We have seen multiple adaptations of this epic over the years, and the most anticipated one is the upcoming Ramayana movie series, set to release this year. Fans across the world have placed enormous hope on this film, which is being marketed with genuine global appeal. It will apparently be the most expensive Indian film ever made. If it performs well globally, it could become a landmark soft power asset. It can draw people from around the world toward Indian cinema and culture. When it comes to Indian sports, cricket is the most prominent. I mean, India clearly dominates it. It's treated like a religion in India. The IPL is the richest cricket league in the world. But what about football? Why isn't there more investment in the game, given its unmatched global appeal? What about other sports? What about the Olympics? Why isn't Indian talent being nurtured and showcased on the world stage? And it's not as though Indian pop culture hasn't gone global before. There are many places around the world where you can still find devoted fans of Indian movies and music.
Did you know Russia loves Indian films? But why? Because of this song. Raj Kapoor is a superstar in Russia. The story begins in 1950s when Soviet Russia stopped producing films and they were fighting with America. So importing Hollywood films was not an option. But they loved Bollywood. Our films were simple, light-hearted romances, songs, dance numbers and whatnot. And that's why Raj Kapoor was a big star in Soviet Russia. In fact, when he went to Russia, there were thousands of fans who wanted to meet him. When he sat in a taxi, they literally lifted the taxi. I don't know whether this story is true or false, but it is true that movies like Anari and Mr. 420 were huge hits in Russia, and they remain cult classics even today.
We love Indian cinema, I've already spoken about it. It's probably the only country in the world that, other than India, we have a separate channel that streams Indian movies days and nights.
And that brings me to Indian music, which has crazy potential to shape India's soft power. Despite having some of the most complex and beautiful musical traditions in the world and producing incredibly talented artists, Indian music receives nowhere near the global recognition it deserves. Why can't the next pop sensation come from India? Why do these artists have to limit themselves to audiences from their own country or community? The globalization of Korean pop culture didn't just benefit its artists and labels. It unlocked massive investment opportunities and entirely new markets. If India doesn't tell its own story, some culture sure will do it. And you'll just keep watching.
Fashion loves Indian aesthetics, but not giving the credit, and 2025 made that impossible to ignore. Indian artisans, craftsmanships, and textiles have been the backbone of major luxury houses for decades, but they were always the silent contributors. The credit never followed the craft. But now we have creatives like Rahul Mishra and Gaurav Gupta, consistently delivering some of the strongest couture collections at Paris. And I say this with no hesitation, they are among the best couturiers of this era. Not only do they make the Indian craftsmanship more visible by talking about it, but more importantly, they credit it like Farag, using 12th century hand block printing in modern silhouettes, Gully Labs using similar philosophy making handmade sneakers, Archive City staging one of the best collections built from upcycle pieces. I just hope global outlets begin platforming Indian creatives directly instead of continuing the silent export of Indian craftsmanship without credit.
The right use of soft power can place a country in a position of enormous advantage by transforming how it is perceived globally. In the past, India's incredible cultural output was a natural byproduct of its prosperity. It had abundant resources, enough not just to sustain its culture but to let it flourish organically. It didn't even need to promote itself. The travelers did that job. From Megasthenes to Marco Polo, the world both respected and stood in awe of India. These are stories worth telling.
Before the West even dreamed of empires, one man already owned the continent. From the peaks of Afghanistan to the gold of Bengal, his armies didn't march, they devoured. Alexander chased the horizon. Ashoka owned it. Then came Kalinga, a land drowned in blood. The day the king's lion dropped its sword, it wasn't out of mercy. It was from terror. He hadn't seen enough death. He had simply seen the truth, that if he continued, the world itself would not just kneel. It would vanish into ash. Remember his name, the king who conquered the world, then destroyed his own will to conquer. Power isn't evil, but his mercy was the ultimate fear of a curse man who realized he was too dangerous to live.
The present situation is nowhere near that, but progress is still possible. We've only touched on a few of the many assets that could amplify India's soft power potential. A nation is able to invest more deeply into these things like its culture once it becomes prosperous and developed, once it begins solving its most pressing problems and channels its energy into genuine, meaningful development. But none of this means anything if the people within the country have lost hope. The same people who made memes about the Galgotia incident aren't even talking about India's recent nuclear achievement. Soft power begins with perception, and perception begins at home. It is ultimately in your hands to shape how the world sees you, through the culture you create, the values you live by, and the stories you choose to tell.